All right, hey guys, thanks for checking out Terrific Talk here on the CLNS Media Network. I appreciate you tuning in here during the summer. Always tough. There's not a whole lot going on in the sports world right now. People are on their vacations. It's hot as hell outside. There's thunderstorms all the goddamn time. I used to think I was scared of thunderstorms. I really don't like lightning. It freaks me out. My dogs, Kobe and Lola, make me look like the freaking toughest guy in the world. They are freaking out. They're hiding as we speak as the clouds get darker. Kobe actually is sick under the weather. He's throwing up everywhere. It's not pretty here in the Terrific Talk studios, but we're going to get through it. Kind of got a monster podcast for you. Two titans from the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN. Adam Schefter, Trey Wingo. These are two guys that I've been trying to get on this podcast for years, been reaching out to them on Twitter. Finally was able to get in touch with both of them. Had two great conversations. They both could not have been nicer. And I wanted to put them together here for you for a nice, mid-July Terrific Talk podcast with two of the best in the business. So I hope you like it. We're going to start out with Schefty, and then we'll move on to Trey Wingo. And let's not wait any longer because I think I hear Kobe about to throw up again. All right, let's do it. Today I'm joined by one of the most influential reporters in all of sports. He's been breaking news for ESPN for 10 years. I can't thank him enough for coming on today. He is none other than Adam Schefter. Adam, welcome to Terrific Talk.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
So you've built up this amazing brand. You're one of the most trusted names in sports reporting. You've got over 7 million followers on Twitter. How have you done it? What do you think are some of the keys to your success?
Well, it only took 30 years, Tom.
There you go.
Listen, I feel very fortunate to have started out in newspapers and having worked over 15 years in newspapers. And, again, that was such a great training ground, getting to work in the Colorado newspaper war between the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post. And when I first got into this, didn't think that this would be the career that I would wind up in. I never imagined that I would be a football television reporter for a great network like ESPN, working with the great people that I do. That would be something that was so beyond my imagination. I really just wanted to be a baseball newspaper reporter or maybe even a newspaper columnist. And, of course, the media landscape shifted, and all I could do was basically try to work as hard as I could and do the best job I could and make as many contacts as I could and build as many relationships as I could. And it just sort of evolved over time. So when you say, how did this happen or how did you do this, I didn't have any great plan to do this. It's all been sort of accidental, and it's happened all along the way, and I feel very fortunate that it has.
It's an amazing journey. I've heard you once say that sometimes the best thing to happen to you is for someone to tell you no.
Oh, yeah.
At what times in your career did you face some adversity?
Well, you just pick a spot, and there have been people all along the way that have said no, that have rejected you, that have discouraged you, that have stood in your way. Like that's not just me. That's not exclusive to me. That's everybody. I think that everybody's encountered no all along the way, and I think that builds you up and it makes you appreciate when you finally do get where you'd like to go or do get to land a job that you could only dream of getting. Again, it took me 2 years to get a newspaper job, and the only reason I went to graduate school at Northwestern was because nobody would hire me out of college. Every newspaper sent me a rejection letter, and even the way that I wound up in this field to begin with was just the fact that the football team didn't need somebody to pick up jock straps and hand out water bottles, and the same with the basketball team, and there was rejection there, and there was rejection when I went to graduate school trying to get a job, and there was rejection when I got an internship in Seattle trying to land a full-time job, and there was rejection even when I landed in Denver and I wanted to be that baseball beat writer, and they interviewed, didn't get that job, and I was forced to stick on the poor NFL beat and cover the Denver Broncos, who went on to win 2 Super Bowls. And so, again, if you're one of those people that believes in things happen for a reason, and I often do believe in that, and in my particular case, it's a situation where, again, this was not what I set out to do. This is what happened all along the way. But I can tell you that at every step of the way, it was filled with rejection.
What would you say is your favorite part of the job today?
That's a great question. Like, what do I like about my job? I like everything. The people I work with are tremendously talented. The company I work for, has kind of led the way in that space. I love a big story. Like, that's the best. Whether you're working on it, broke it, reporting on it, analyzing it, whatever it may be. When there's a big story, free agency, or the draft, that's to me that's as good as it gets. Again, you live for those moments, and feel very fortunate to do the job that I do.
You break news all the time. These days, a lot of people, are tweeting things out fast without really checking their sources. They're just kind of in a hurry to get it out there. How do you combat that to make sure, you get the news out first while also making sure it's correct and credible?
That's a great question, Tom. And I would say this, that I think that you look at every story and there's an upside to reporting on a story and being first, and there's a downside to it. And how does the upside compare to the downside? And there's a lot of things you hear. And there are not any stories, I don't think, that are worth the upside if you're risking or exposing yourself on the downside of things, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was in graduate school, they said to us, if your mother tells you she loves you, check it out. And all these years later, I haven't confirmed that my mother loves me, but I've been able to confirm other news stories. And so you're just trying to do that. And when you feel like you have the story confirmed and are comfortable going with it. But again, there's nothing quite like double checking it, triple checking it. But of course, we live in a day and age where, as you mentioned, Tom, people are asking you to be first on things, but you better be right on things, and it's more important to be right than it is to be first. And so you just have to be extra careful on these things. And even when you do report things sometimes, and then people deny it, and it's kind of funny. I've had that happen in my career, and you know the truth. You know that the story, you wouldn't have gone with the story if you hadn't checked it out. But yet some people, they go a different way.
That's got to be frustrating.
Well, no job is perfect. Every job comes with challenges, and that's part of the situation. It is what it is.
So when you're not working and you're not looking at your phone, what do you like to do outside of the job?
Well, it's a good question, and I would just say to you that the job in a way really infiltrates your life to the point where it takes over a lot of things. So, right now, I just played golf with my cousin and my nephew and some friends, and we are driving back, and he's driving, and I was on my phone on the way up, and I'm making some calls and doing your podcast on the way back, and the job is kind of all encompassing, like a lot of jobs for a lot of people in a lot of fields. It's not any different, and I think if you are fully invested in your job, it consumes a lot of your time. And so, like I said, it becomes a part of you. And so if I'm not working, I'm with my family. And if I'm not with my family, I'm working. There aren't many times that I take that all of a sudden, like, I don't remember the last beach day I had. I don't remember the last time we went on a vacation for a week and just said, okay, let's leave the phones home and disconnect. And that doesn't happen. You just don't do that. And my wife and I went to Nantucket for our 10th wedding anniversary a couple of years ago on a Friday. I remember it was the first time we had been away together in a very long time. And when we landed, the news broke that the Chiefs had just fired their general manager, John Dorsey. And all of a sudden you've got people around the league calling you to ask what happened, and other front office people calling you to see what the Chiefs are going to do for a replacement. And you're on the phone quite a bit. I remember, that I don't think that was the way that my wife envisioned spending our 10th wedding anniversary, but
probably not.
Sometimes that's what happens, and that's part of the job too.
What's like a typical Sunday game day like for you?
Great question. And in the past, it has been such that, well, first of all, you wake up with a lot of adrenaline on Sunday morning. I would imagine it's a lot like, the teams who are involved in the games, whether it's the front office or the coaching staff or the players or the medical group. Like, you just wake up, there's a certain pep in your step. It feels like game day. It feels like Sunday. There's a certain feel to those days in the fall because, there's 17 of them in this regular season, and you can just feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love that feeling of Sundays. And, I'll be up at 4:35 in the morning and, filing some news to the ESPN news desk and driving to Bristol and having an early breakfast. A lot of times I'll have breakfast with Mort, 7 in the morning. We go into meetings to go over the show, go do Sports Center, go do Sunday NFL Countdown. When Sunday NFL Countdown ends at 1 o'clock, what we've done in the past, the last 10 years, is we go to what we call the ESPN War Room, and all our colleagues and all the football shows, they go in there, and there must be, 12, 14 TV screens, and you're watching all the games all together, a bunch of people.
Cool.
And that's a lot of fun. And it's also the one time during the week, I feel like, where you just get to sit back and kind of watch. And I don't want to say you don't have to worry about checking on things because guys get hurt, but I mean, the game's going on. Like, let the game play out, and we'll check on the injuries after.
Yeah.
But you'd like to just kind of, I guess, let your guard down, if you will. Just kind of kick back, just kind of observe and watch on a Sunday. That we love doing.
That's really interesting. Just out of curiosity, how many phones do you have?
2.
2? Interesting. Yeah. I can't imagine the amount of contacts that you have. I'm just imagining you like losing your phone and like a Facebook post like, "Hey guys, new phone, leave your number."
Well, in my phone there are 12,611 contacts listed.
Oh
right
my
now.
God!
But some of them are repeats, and once I was also single back in Denver, so some of these are people I used to date back in the day.
Incredible.
And some of them are probably repeats too. But yeah, right now the iPhone's listing 12,611.
Amazing. I recently had Trey Wingo here on the pod, and he was raving about Sushi Monday in the ESPN cafeteria.
Yeah, excellent.
What is your favorite go-to at the cafe there?
Well, I wish Sushi Monday was every day to give birth to.
Wow.
Because I would have it every day. They do a great job of that. They have a Starbucks kiosk, basically, that on Sunday morning I go get my chai tea latte or whatever it may be.
Nice.
And the people there, they really do a great job. They work so hard and appreciate everything they do for the company. All their stuff is good. Salad bar, they have a great salad bar that's really good. I'll do that a lot of times during the week. On game day, a lot of times we get some omelets made for us for dinner. Nothing better than omelets for dinner, Tom. It's always a good thing.
Good go-to.
Yeah. I think eggs for dinner are massively underrated.
Okay.
My own opinion. And so they really offer a lot of choices. There's a lot of variety in that ESPN cafe. Aside from shooting all the ESPN Sports Center commercials that they have,
yeah,
they do a great job. And there's a lot of people in there that work really hard that we're indebted to for their service.
Last question here. Bob Lee retiring after 40 years from ESPN. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm just going to tell you that he was on air the most talented person I've ever worked with. I remember the day that Aaron Hernandez committed suicide in prison. And I was driving in from New York. It was 5:30 in the morning, and let's just say I got to ESPN at 7 o'clock, and we rushed on camera, and it was me and Bob Lee on there for about 30 minutes, and he's speaking spontaneously off the top of his head, no notes, and I mean, it was unbelievable. He could have been an evening newscaster. He could have been David Muir or Lester Holt or Walter Cronkite or you pick the guy. That's how smooth and polished and worldly and intelligent he was, that he could sit down and do live TV in breaking news situations unlike anybody that I've ever seen. He just was incredibly poised, incredibly intelligent. He belongs on the ESPN Mount Rushmore of great people who have passed through the company. He might be the first name that you put on there. I mean, Chris Berman would probably be the first two. And just been, You heard all the kind words that everybody had to say about the guy.
Yeah.
And I would second every single word that we heard and then some. And I think Jeremy Schaap eloquently said that there never has been an ESPN without Bob Lee working there, and there never will be another ESPN again which Bob Lee hasn't made a mark on the place. He was that good. He was the conscience of ESPN. And I know he's alive, and I know he'll be around, but he will be missed. I don't want to make it sound like he's gone, but the guy was incredible at his job. Incredible.
Great legacy, Adam. Thank you so much for your perspective there. Everybody, go check out the Adam Schefter podcast. Follow him on Twitter. Maybe go grab an omelet with him at the ESPN Cafe. Yeah. Adam, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. All right, quick break here from this fantastic interview to bring you one of our great sponsors. Support for Terrific Talk comes from Manscaped, who is #1 in men's below-the-belt grooming. Oh yeah, Manscaped. Do you know Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels? That rhymes. You know, it's summertime. You know, you want to keep things clean, well kept down there. Manscaped's got you covered with their redesigned electric trimmer. Their Lawnmower 2.0 has proprietary skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't leave you all cut up down there, because no one wants to see that. Manscaping accidents are finally a thing of the past. And hey, Manscaped's also got the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing deodorant and moisturizer for you. You already put deodorant on your armpits. Why aren't you putting deodorant down there? You know, the smelliest part of your body? Yeah. Anyways, we got a great deal. You can get 20% off and free shipping if you just use the code TERRIFIC at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code TERRIFIC. Go check it out and please let me know what you think. I've got another fantastic guest from the NFL world. He's one of the most recognizable personalities at ESPN. He's currently the co-host of ESPN Radio's Morning Drive show, Golic and Wingo, and one of the primary figures for ESPN's NFL coverage. He, of course, is Trey Wingo. Trey, welcome to Terrific Talk. How are you?
Good, Tom. Thanks for reaching out. How are you?
I'm doing great. So the power of Twitter, right? I reached out to you on Twitter asking you to come on to give some advice for young people. Here we are. What do you think's the best piece of advice you could give for new hires at ESPN today?
Find the way to find your voice, you know. When I started, there's so many other different ways you can sort of accomplish that goal now than when I got into this business many years ago. And it's interesting because the one thing that's really cool about this profession to me is that there's no, like, if you want to be a doctor, you know what you have to do. You got to go to college, you got to get good grades, then you got to into med school, then you got to do that, then you got to do a residency. You know, the steps are very laid out. Same thing for a lawyer or someone who wants to be a chemical or structural engineer and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
I can't tell you or any of these young people, well, if you do this, and this, you'll be successful. It is, in a very good way and sometimes a very bad way, a very subjective business. And I know people that will check off all the boxes, you know, do stuff in college, then go get a job somewhere in a small market, then try and work their way up, and they're doing everything that you would list out, and for whatever reason it doesn't work. And then there are people who just somehow run into the right person at the right time and meet someone unbeknowingly of who they are and what they do and impress them with how they carry themselves, and boom, just like that, it happens. And that can be the sort of the wonderful part of it and the frustrating part of the business. But the thing that I would tell most people to understand is there's no checklist to get it right. It's just either going to happen or it isn't.
How are you able to find your own voice? I've heard you talk about just how important it is finding your own voice.
Yeah, you know, for me, it was more of a traditional route. When I went to school and I changed my major 5 times. Okay, I was not like these gung-ho people now. I mean, college for either the better or worse, and for a lot of times it was better, was more of a social experiment for me than it was an academic experiment. But that was on me. There were things that I could have done. I just chose not to do them. You know, so when I graduated from college, the thing I said was, man, I don't ever want to get into broadcasting. This is ridiculous. So I got an office job in Washington, D.C. as an account executive for a PR firm. And, you know, D.C.'s a great place to live, and it was, you know, I had my own office. It was very cool, and I was working on stuff that some people thought would have been great. But I hated it And that back in the day, I would end up closing the door in my office, just spend hours reading the sports pages before the internet took over the world.
Yeah.
And just finding, I got to do this. I got to try this. So I moved back home to Greenwich, Connecticut in my parents' basement. Literally, I was living in my parents' basement and got a job at NBC as a page through the Page program. And if you're familiar with that at all, the Page program is very similar to the way it was portrayed on the old TV show 30 Rock. I mean, you wear blue blazers, you give guided tours of the building. Basically, whatever they need you to do, you do, but there's some ancillary benefits. I got to work on the David Letterman show when he was at NBC. I got to work on the Phil Donahue show. I got to work on Saturday Night Live. Wow. And I got to do some other stuff, and I'm like, this is for me. This is what I want to do. And so I made a demo tape, much later than most people would. I was almost 25 when I got my first on-air job in Binghamton, New York. I was there for 2 years, got fired from the worst TV station in America. Trust me, it was the worst TV station in America. And then got a job in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I was not only the local sports anchor, but I got to do Lehigh University basketball and football play-by-play, which was fun. And I was there for less than a year, and I got a call to go to St. Louis, Missouri. And, St. Louis was a top 20, 25 market at the time, and that was really fun. And then I was there for 6 years, and then one day I came in from work, and I had a 203 number that they wanted me to call, and I knew that was Connecticut, so I figured it was ESPN, and, 22 years later, here we are.
The rest is history. So it's interesting.
Something. I don't know if it's history.
It's in the record books. I just doing some research on you. It's interesting you didn't kind of know right away you wanted to go in the media, but your dad was the co-founder of People magazine. I didn't know that. It's incredible.
Yeah, it was. And he was a real inspiration. Now, I will say, like, when I went to college, my major was always first I was radio TV, then I was journalism, then I was broadcast, then I was something else. And then, so I did go down that path originally. That was the original plan.
Gotcha.
Then I got sidetracked into just, for lack of a better term, having a good time.
Yeah.
And, I changed my major 3 months before I graduated because I needed, if I had stuck with my other major, I would have had to add another lab science. I'm like, well, I'm not sticking around for another semester. So, yeah, but, it was really cool. When I was a kid growing up and we had, like, teacher in-service days when the teachers get the day off and the kids have the day off from school, a lot of times I would go into New York with my dad, and we would, we'd ride the train in together from Greenwich into Grand Central Terminal, and I would go with him to work, and I have vivid memories of when I was a kid. He would give me copy and he said, now run this down to somebody else's hall, and they had these long hallways in the old Time Life building, which is right across from Radio City Music Hall. It's not the Time Life building anymore, sadly. And they had these long hallways, and I would get one of those like office chairs with rollers on them, and I would just fly down the hall back, pushing myself in the chair, delivering copy. But I always thought my dad had a really cool and interesting job. And in a very sort of unintentional way, I really think he inspired me at a very young age because, he wasn't a banker, he wasn't a lawyer, he wasn't a doctor, he wasn't an accountant. He had a very weird, sort of different, but very interesting way to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very cool. So he absolutely did inspire me, but it took a while for me to get back to that.
You've had the opportunity of taking over ESPN's NFL draft coverage from the legendary Chris Berman, more recently taken over from another legend, Mike Greenberg, on the radio show. These are really like big shoes to fill, and you've done it twice. What was your kind of approach to making these big changes work, dealing with all the high expectations came with it?
Well, the way I've sort of looked at it is I had a job to do, and my like in both cases, whether it was Boom on the NFL side and especially on the draft or, Greeny and Golick together all those years, they built a pretty good house.
Yeah.
Like, my job was just not to burn it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My job was just not to be the arson blowtorch. And thankfully, on both those sides, that has worked. The draft has turned into this extravaganza, and it's really a lot of fun. And the radio show, I've known Golick forever. He was one of the first ever guys I did NFL Live with when it started back in 2003. We live literally about a mile away from each other.
Wow.
And our kids went up through the same junior football program in the local area here together, his sons went on to play at Notre Dame. My son went on to play college football at Georgetown. And so we've always sort of been on the same path, the same track, but just never really put together for long periods of time once Mike and Mike became the thing that it was, and that took more of his time. So that part of it was, on the radio show, was easy. The relationship with Mike was not an issue. It was just, dealing with getting up at a much earlier time than someone who was a night owl by nature would normally be.
How was that adjustment getting up that early for you?
Well, we're 18 months in, and it still hasn't caught up. I don't know, quite frankly, if it ever will. Literally, it would be much easier for me to stay up till 4 a.m. than it would be to get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. But if that's the biggest part or problem with my job, I've got it pretty good.
Pretty good. TV versus radio. Is there one you prefer doing over the other? You love doing both.
They're very different, and they're very much the same in some instances as well. Like for me, at the end of the day, on both of them, it's about storytelling, right? It's about setting the stage, setting the scene. But they are different. Like, for example, in the draft, or doing NFL Live or NFL Primetime, it's my job to sort of set the scene, set the stage, and let the people who are the experts do the work. And my job is to keep the conversation going, put in ancillary points that will put bows or ribbons on conversations and get us moving to the next thing. With radio, it's especially in the morning format, it is very much different in the sense that I am, for lack of a better term, one of those experts, whether people believe it or want to or not.
Yeah.
It's our opinions that matter. So that's the biggest change. Now, or the biggest difference between the two. I think fundamentally telling interesting stories and relating information in an interesting, informational and humorous, hopefully, way when possible is the goal in both of them, but they are drastically different in how you want to do that.
I know you're a big golfer. Who do you like at the U.S. Open coming up at Pebble?
Well, listen, I have said for years I never thought Tiger was going to win another major. I thought he was done. So I had so much joy, and I understand why people didn't. I'm not telling them they should. But for me, he was the most dominant athlete I've ever seen in my broadcasting career, and that includes Michael Jordan. And I know people might shake their heads at that, but Tom, are you a golfer at all?
Yeah, I play.
Okay, you know how ridiculous this game is, right? Like,
yeah.
I just played 2 separate nines today. I played the front nine with a friend of mine, and I couldn't miss. I couldn't miss.
Nice.
It was unbelievable. So I came back home and did some other stuff, then went back out again, and I couldn't hit a fairway. I couldn't hit water if I fell out of a boat.
It's consistency is so hard in golf. That's with me. One day you're driving it well, the next day you're not putting it well. It's hard to add it all up together and be that consistent.
Yeah, I've never seen an athlete more dominant in a sport than Tiger was for a long stretch of time in a sport which is impossible to dominate. So, for me, when he came back and won the majors, by the way, the first time ever he's come from behind on a Sunday to win a major, the whole thing it's just so, if you had presented this script to someone, they would have said, get out of here.
It was amazing.
This isn't going to work. And then to see him, come off and play well Sunday at Memorial, obviously Pebble is where he has it's a long way of me saying, I would not be shocked if Tiger won a second major this year. That being said, if any major right now doesn't start with Brooks Koepka at the start of the conversation, you clearly haven't been watching golf. He's batting 500 over his last 8 majors. That is a Tiger-like stretch that he's on.
Yeah.
The only difference between Brooks and Tiger is that Tiger wanted to win everything. Brooks really only cares about the Masters or the majors.
Yeah.
I think he has 1 or 2 regular tour wins and 4 majors. Tiger, of course, as we all know, has 81 regular tour wins, which includes 15 majors, and he's 1 away from tying Sammy Snead's record for the most in PGA Tour history. But every time Tiger tees it up, as he said all those years ago, second sucks and third is worst. That was his philosophy. Brooks is like, I'm just going to amble through these other ones and then found a way to pound you guys into submission at the majors.
Yep. Brooks is tough. It's going to be fun. I'm rooting for Tiger, too. Before I let you go, fun fact about the ESPN campus. What can you tell us?
The greatest single day in the history of ESPN came in 2000 when they built the ESPN cafeteria. And I mean to tell you, that was a big bleeping deal. For the first few years of ESPN before I got here, there was a McDonald's across the street, and that was the most profitable McDonald's in the United States for several years. There was nothing there, okay? When I first got to ESPN, we had a little room where a guy would bring a cart with wraps. That was it. And I'll never forget standing next to a guy named Mike McQuaid, who has been here since day one, 1979. He's the head of all of our golf production and other things. He's one of the best, most creative, most unbelievable television producers I've ever worked with. He's amazing. He stood there as that cafeteria opened and he had all these opportunities, and he said, "This is the single greatest day in the history of ESPN." And 19 years later,
wow.
That's the greatest thing about the campus is the ESPN Cafe.
What's the best food in the cafe?
Well, I'm a breakfast guy all the time, so literally you can get breakfast whenever you want, you know. And they also have, Tom, we're very progressive. We have those Impossible burgers that are made from plant, and I'm telling you, they taste like a burger.
Everybody says this.
Impossible burger, you've got to try it. We have them on the ESPN Cafe.
Wow. That is good to know. Everyone says
also,
they taste just like the regular.
Sushi Mondays are also very good.
Sushi Mondays at ESPN. Nice. All right. Good to know. Thank you, Trey.
You got it, man.
All right. This was perfect. Everybody, go check out Trey on ESPN. He's the best. Trey, thank you again.
Tom, no worries, man. Happy to do it. Best.
Welcome to Terrific Talk. My name is Tom Anderson. Tom Anderson.
Back to win, back again, gone. Back, gone. Tom
Anderson.
Great cash, homie. Great cash, homie.
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown!
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown!
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Sounds going crazy.
Terrific Talk Podcast. Welcome back, Terrific Talk Podcast.
Here comes the host.
I'm your host, Tom Anderson.
First, behind the bag. It gets